Sorry for me?
Yeah.
Buddy.
To the point it reached where it was like, oh, you're a nurse there? Ooh.
Yo, I don't know how you work night shift.
You had evals every year, and you know what the maximum raise that they would give you was 25 cents.
There's something special about your love. I think it's one of a kind.
Welcome to another episode of On Our BS. If this is your first time here, we're going to be changing up a little. I think you know us for our kind of like our love and relationship topics.
This is still going to be love and relationship, but an important part of that is work-life balance. I think this is a topic that is going to be able to hit a nerve with a lot of people.
Today we're going to be mostly talking about nursing. We're talking in general about healthcare, but in particular nursing and the realm of nursing.
So I don't think you have to be a nurse. I don't even think you have to be in healthcare to be able to relate to what we're talking about, because some of what we're going to talk about is just going to be work-life balance stuff. Some of the minutia things will go into, you know, healthcare and those things, but it will be relatable, I promise. Stick with us.
As well as if you are considering nursing and you're you know,
definitely.
I hear a lot of people complaining about this and that.
We are both nurses.
Because we are both nurses, and we're gonna just kind of give you a quick background in nursing, like who we are, because you're probably gonna be like, I don't know you, you've been doing nursing for a year. Our backgrounds in nursing is different as well. Dan, I will clap for him, I will praise him for that. He's done literally everything from tertiary to primary care in nursing. So what is your
One of the major differences between me and Lisa as it currently stands right now is that I'm an LPN and Lisa's an RN. And in my time as a nurse, I have worked in a nursing home, which was long-term care.
Long-term rehab.
Yeah, long-term rehab. I have worked in a clinical setting, which is considered outpatient in a specialty.
What specialty was that?
That was ENT, or ears, nose, and throat. I left that to go into corrections, and I have now worked in a hospital system for the first time in a ER setting. And I've been in 2 different ERs at this point. And I'm being very technical, but I've been in 2 different ER settings, one in a standalone setting and one connected to a hospital. And yeah, so that's what I have done. I'm gonna let Lisa touch on what she has done in her illustrious career so far.
That's just I like that. Okay, I've been a nurse for 14 and a half, almost 15 years. Started nursing after my first degree at a university. And then I went to Miami-Dade. Big up to Miami-Dade, big up to Sheridan Tech. First nursing department was a cardiothoracic surgery at a hospital in South Florida. And I did that for 2 years. Then after that, I went to a tele floor for like 4 months, 5 months. And then I ended up going to a neurology floor, neurology stroke unit floor. And I did that for almost 10 years. And then now I am working per diem in a surgical PCU setting. So I've done everything from ICU to IMCU back then is what they used to call it, to now a PCU, a surgical PCU.
We're now in the same hospital setting, and same hospital system, but in the same actual hospital as well. And the reason why I laugh at that is we worked in the same hospital system before, but I was in corrections, so there was like, I could relate to an extent before, but now it's like we can have arguments about different departments and like handing off to each other. We never worked the same nights, but like, you know, some people that I will know will give and report to my wife and vice versa and stuff like that. Which people are slowly starting to find out, like, oh, that's your husband, or that's your wife.
I want to just kind of pin that to, you know, where we're kind of gonna go is, remember that, is that because we work in not only the same hospital system, but the same hospital, when you are managing the topic we're gonna discuss later, this can be difficult as well, working in the same hospital.
Oh yeah, the work-life balance is the whole thing. So, within just even having the same profession, because
How many people you know their spouses are nurses?
Well, we know one other couple that they're both
like
RNs.
Like daddy, like, you know, when you think of like my father and his like batchmates.
Who are you talking about them?
No, I'm just saying, I was gonna say like some of them have wives that were nurses.
In and around healthcare, But yeah, like in our generation, I know one other couple.
I point that out because it's not that it's like, oh my god, it's so rare, we are special, we're snowflakes.
It is a bit rare because
it is rare.
Nurses don't like marrying nurses. Nurses don't like nurses. Disclaimer. So this is the thing, right? Because we know this is in social media, please take with a grain of salt any stories that we tell you. They are not about our current employment.
If it is happening during our current employment,
they'll It'll be
we are aware
disguised
that,
enough
we're not using
that
these
we're not-
names. We're not using
no
the
patient
ages.
names.
We understand
No hospital
HIPAA.
systems
Yeah.
names, you know, because I don't need to be in my nurse manager's office about anything. But people need to realize that in every job that you're going to have where there's any level of stress, there's going to be some point where you're going to need to vent about something.
Let's go into the first topic on that. First, what are we drinking? I'm a little like, yo, should we be drinking? Because like this is like
Neither one of us
professional
worked
topics.
tomorrow.
But the thing is, in topics like this, you might need a drink. If you're listening to this video podcast on your way to work, please don't be drinking with us. But if you are home and you are trying to listen and vent to our voices, pop open a bottle.
Yeah.
Pop open a bottle of beer or wine. But this is what we're drinking tonight.
So this is not sponsored. This is some Oliver. This one is a really good one. This is the Cherry Moscato. They have a mixed blend one and they have a blueberry. And some people, yeah, I saw that at Target. But this one is our favorite so far.
This one is very light,
has
kind
a
of like a
little bit of
lychee,
sweet to
kind
it.
of like
Yeah.
flowery taste to it.
We're gonna crack this open and get into this topic.
Cheers to
Cheers
you.
to you.
Cheers to you.
Buckle up.
Okay, so first topic is social media and nursing. So,
Okay.
my opinion is, because I am one of those like kind of old nurses, why I say don't be doing no TikToks and all that stuff. And because I come from a work environment that was very toxic and they wanted to blame you for every and anything, even down to the seconds of like, oh, well, you posted this and we looked at the metadata that you took this and a patient fell and this happened and we timed it and you were in the break room doing a TikTok dance or posting a TikTok dance, even though you're like, oh, I filmed that like right when I came in before I started my shift, or this was my break. They don't care. Because I know and understand that, and not every hospital is like that. There are some floors that do TikToks together, hospitals that will film videos and stuff like that together and put them on the social media. But for me, and how I've seen the horrors of how that can ruin careers and how people can misconstrue things and not understand.
In nurse court, which is you end up in front of the board trying to explain, trying to defend your license.
The ethics, I was even talking about the ethics departments in hospitals. You're even going further, having to defend your license. Like, that's scary. So that's why I would tell my nursing babies, don't do TikToks at work. But I could understand.
But not just TikTok, it's just social media on the whole.
Yeah.
I will say this.
Yeah, let me correct that.
I will say this, right? I do think that healthcare does a little bit too much of this. We are living in the benefit of living in a country where we have the freedom of speech, and obviously speech is going to be limited even within that freedom. But, you know, these are, for the most part, private institutions, and they indoctrinate you with trying to say like, yes, this is what's going to happen, or this is bad, or you're gonna, even when you're not putting people at risk for HIPAA or anything like that, just don't do it. Just don't do it. You know, be very careful about it. I remember even there was one doctor that was doing his skits at home, and they were still giving him a hard time at home about it, and it wasn't even in the hospital setting.
So if you follow Nurse John, you'll probably hear me talk about Nurse John as again further in the pod, because he said something very poignant. I watched an interview about him. I don't even know if I even discussed it with Dan. But Nurse John is that people were like, oh, well, you did this skit in like the break room, and he's like, no, this is my bathroom.
Yeah.
So calm down. But even that, guys, what was the question that they asked you at your last job interview that you were like, wow, that's a show of the times that we're in?
I don't remember the actual word for word, but I know they asked me how I felt about it, which was a very sneaky thing of doing it. I don't really remember.
They asked, do you have a social media presence where you discuss, how do they say, like you discuss healthcare or your nursing or something like that? The fact that it has become a part of a interview question shows you that hospitals are like, we have to be like concerned if you're like, oh yeah, I have a whole like social media presence, and it's like, why is that important to you? Like, if we're talking the truth, obviously we understand HIPAA. Like, we are professionals. Like, there's only really been one time I've seen somebody that did something on social media that I was like, girl, where did you come from? Do you remember the woman at Down South where she was working on a peds floor, and she posted a picture of the baby, the diagnosis the baby had?
Yeah, vaguely, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
This is the thing, right?
And there's full-on video.
There's two rules, right, that I would say that you have to remember. One is that the whole social media thing and the truth behind it and all that. Nobody wants, when they have their $1 million company, no matter how real and honest you are being, they don't want that kind of backlash, right? They don't even want it from patients. There's situations where they're trying to take phones away from patients, right? To what extent of power they have to be able to limit recording, which from a patient's perspective,
which is important though, because that could be a whole nother topic too. But I understand being on the flip side of that and being a nurse and having family want to record us and being like,
oh yeah, no, don't record me.
Don't record me. But then also have that same respect for your patients. And I've seen people like post things where they're like feeding a patient, and I'm like, how is that allowed? Like, you must be lucky that your hospital system is not checking like social medias, because
or they're signing off on it that they're actually cool with that.
Like, like if you are one of those like one-on-one healthcare workers that like work in a home with your patient, and you guys have a relationship that you can, and
they're cool until they're not cool. Because the other rule that I would always say, and this is a poignant rule, is this, right? Like, you can do HIPAA and say all of this, but they don't really care about HIPAA. What they care about is they want to watch their own behind, and they want anything that's going to reflect negatively on them, whether it's true or exaggerated, they don't want, and they're going to treat as an aggravation. You could literally, half of your hospital system could be on the floor and you're outside filming it from a hurricane, or because we down in Florida, so I'm gonna bring up hurricanes, right? And you go and film that and put that out there, and you are an employee there, they're gonna say you're helping to facilitate them losing money. And if you want to lose your license or lose your job, facilitate your hospital system losing money. I don't care if it's a toxic place. I don't work in a toxic setting right now, but at the end of the day, the ultimate rule for a new or old nurse is, if it is going to potentially make them look bad, they are going to find they are going to defend themselves against you. No matter how loyal you are to them, they will cut you off, like cut your right hand off. They will cut you off quicker.
With a quickness, Do you feel that there's any social media filming at the workplace that you
at the workplace? No. Even this is, like I said, is why I have to put it where I'm saying anything that you hear me talk about is from a past job. Because it's still dangerous even to do this in my own house, talking about my experiences in the past.
Because again, all it takes is one nurse that is going to be like,
all it takes is one nurse manager to be like, that sounds familiar to me, and blah blah blah. And even though
that's not the point of what this discussion is about. It is supposed to be aiding in not only our venting and our like work-life balance, but it's also to help you guys, get you guys to get like, oh my god, I never really thought about it in that manner. And if you are like, oh, I film videos every single day, because I had a nurse that when she came to the hospital, she'd be doing selfies and videos and stuff like that, and I had to pull her aside and I was like, you need to stop doing that, because we do work in a toxic, like at that time I was a toxic floor, and I was like,
but even in a non-toxic, they could be the best of healthcare systems. Just remember that hospital intends to be standing when you are in your grave, or when you're beyond this life.
They'll get rid of you.
So they will cut you off, no matter how nice they were on welcoming you, ushering you through the door. The second that their reputation is being questioned, they will usher you right back out the door quickly.
So the ick video, we kind of brushed through that. Those are the things that we have problems with, right? Because we all have different, icks, right? But when you do it in your scrubs with your badge on, walking around
at the
hospital you're currently working at, like you're at work,
and they didn't describe they didn't describe anybody by name, but there was just one or two silly patients that were like, you're describing my situation. Well, you're the one that just blew it up and told them that because I was just saying, oh, this patient did this in their room and this was crazy. If you want to be silly and identify yourself in the comment section, that is actually
I will say that they didn't describe patients. They described things that actions that you're like, well, I was just there and I remember that nurse. Is that me? So it's not that you were like, that they described a diagnosis, right? Well, no, because they did. Because they did kind of go into particular, because it was like a L&D floor, a labor and delivery floor. So there were some kind of things that were a little kind of particular.
No, but there were things that people do more.
No, there was like, oh, when the boyfriend is visiting 2 different rooms.
But how many times do you think that has happened? You might be silly and realize that happened to you, but unfortunately that happens very often. Like just in nursing school, I had a patient
system, they kind of had to address it because it was just in my opinion, it was inappropriate. But I have no problem with you venting and telling your stories.
Just in nursing school.
Just be aware of your like how you
your
do
surroundings.
it. Another situation that I will kind of bring up in social media is, and again, we're not bashing people if you want to express how you express it and your hospital system might be okay with it right now, but just be aware of protecting not only your license but protecting your patients, protecting all of that, right?
Yeah.
So another video that I'm kind of pulling from is this nurse lost a patient during the day and then she walks out and she's like crying about it, and it's like, you took the time to set up your phone.
That was the stupidest video.
And like
inspirational music comes on and she beats on the back of the wall. Like it's what is that movie? The dance one, the old one.
Oh, the one that like and the waterfall.
Yeah, like not Dirty Dance. I keep thinking of. What is that called?
Because I wanted to say Footloose and I'm like, that's not it.
But even that, even Footloose, that whole like inspirational moment, and it's I'm unstoppable, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, people pointed out how silly that was.
But that's the thing. It's like, we understand the emotion of that, right? And I'm gonna, we'll talk about that too in another pod. But like, the emotion of losing a patient and having to get right back into it. So I understand that. But the fact that we are aware that this is not like a soap opera, like this is like real life, and that is like and
that's your Tuesday, and that is some family that's gonna see your face and be like, I remember that was my dad.
That was my dad you're talking about, that you were like crying over.
And you probably wasn't even talking about that. That might be months ago before you. But to them, that's the most important thing. And as soon as they identify you as that, that hospital system is not trying to go into the court beside you. So they're going to scramble to try to make sure that they are not involved and that they disassociate themselves in the fastest method. One of the other things I will point out while we're still on this topic, the other thing you have to be wary of in social media as a nurse, unfortunately, are other nurses that are online. The toxicity doesn't stop where you clock in. There are nurses that know what you're talking about.
Well, let me tell you something.
Know what you're talking about.
Let me tell you something though. I have been that nurse though that I've watched a video and I'm like, no, you're doing way too much, right? And I'm like, I know, and I've been like, nah, this nurse is crazy. And they put out too much details. Google their name, nurse license, look up.
Oh yeah.
Right, and you will see the because it lists when people complain. So you I don't know if I had that in me to complain like that. Something I see on social media, but somebody will, and it was something that happened. And when I looked it up, and that woman had a complaint. It was a woman. I remember this is a woman.
Listen.
So don't think that it's like only people that are on your floor, people in your hospital. There's somebody that's like, oh my God, I know that scrub, I know that symbol that's on your, because that's another thing. A lot of these hospitals have these lanyards with the logo on it, so they will be like, oh, connect 2 and 2. They'll call up there, which is something we love to say in nursing. Nursing is very small, so when you think you know somebody, they will call, oh, Mira, do you know this girl? Like, oh yeah, I remember her. Okay.
They'll get at you.
They will find you.
And then the thing is, why bring up the toxicity of other nurses? You have people that will go and watch your content and then go, oh, well, you didn't do this perfectly, this, that. And they do it in parenting. There's people out there that are saying, has this happened to you as a parent? Has this happened to you as a spouse? And there's people out there nurse shaming and acting like they're always on the ball. And if you're always on the ball 24 hours a day, for the 12 hours you clock in, any minute that you're not on break, you're always working and you're perfect. Your HCAP scores are perfect. Congratulations to you. The rest of the world is not that. But you got to be wary of that person that's willing to go and hyper scrutinize, and instead of trying to relate to you, right, they're too busy trying to suck up to some management that I don't know if they think when they go complain about you or point out in the video nitpicking any little critique they can have about you, that they're gonna win some kind of brown nosing points. There are people who are in various stages of nurse burnout, and unfortunately,
what is nurse burnout? Because there's people that don't know.
We're gonna get into it. But unfortunately, while they're in this thing we're about to describe to you, they will turn, unfortunately, to their own as their target of how to express this burnout. Lashing out at someone else. They'll lash out to the closest thing in proximity, or the thing that looks the closest to them.
Yeah.
So watch out for those people. It's unhappy people that will bring you down, and if they have any inner knowledge of how to find out who you are, they will. So just remember, what you put on the internet is there forever.
And it stays for, oh my gosh, I wasn't sure that's what
no matter how much deleting you try to do.
Somebody just has to screenshot it. Somebody has to just
save
video
it real
record.
Quick before you could get to delete it.
It never disappears.
Yeah.
It never does.
It's there forever.
It never does. No matter how you're like, oh, I'm going to get a lawyer, it never disappears.
So think of it like a tattoo. Is it that important as that comment? Is that video? Is whatever you're recording? Is it important enough to get a tattoo about it? And if it's not, if you think it's that important, then go ahead and hit record.
That's true.
But don't do it at your workplace.
But in that same respect, though, we are not saying that you cannot vent about this thing. Because this is something that, again, leading us to the next conversation, is nurse burnout is important to, in the management of it, is talking about it, right? And we don't do enough of that. Merging us into the next topic. So let's get into nurse burnout.
Well, nurse burnout is just how it sounds. I'm pretty sure other people
It is different
have.
for everyone. Again, because of our nursing specialties and length of nursing careers. I'm gonna tell you my symptoms.
Nursing burnout is not always gonna manifest itself the same exact way,
but
but
how
it's
did it
just
manifest
it's
for you?
a.
I think the biggest part of your burnout was your GERD. The symptoms that they have that I found when I researched it were physical, emotional, mental exhaustion and fatigue, compassion fatigue, sleep issues, insomnia or sleeping too much, self-doubt, loss of inspiration, appetite, and weight loss or weight issues. You can gain it or lose it. Cynicism about the job, feeling powerless, depression, and anxiety. There were some that I could have been like,
all of those things.
But
the other thing that they're not pointing out there is that unfortunately these things are like a positive feedback loop. So as you manifest one of these symptoms, what ends up happening, at least in my experience, is that that symptom, as it's being manifest, causes more burnout. So as I'm not getting good sleep, now I'm more exhausted at work, which causes me more anxiety at the job and those things like that. As I'm getting
more cynicism of the job, and no, for sure,
more hopelessness feeling. As I'm getting these physical symptoms, like when I'm getting GERD, I was actually getting GERD in nursing school. GERD is like a really bad acid reflux, burning thing, and it can be just stress related.
I can pinpoint that I've had 3 major burnouts in my nursing career. The first one being first job, it was like, oh my god, do I know anything? That one I physically have like palpitations. I used to work Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and from like Thursday I was having palpitations about going to work on Sunday. From Thursday, right? And then Saturday would be like full on like diarrhea, palpitations, like now I know like panic attacks and stuff like that. Leaving work, you know, like that, because it was a cardiothoracic. These are people that are having open heart surgeries and cabbages and all these like crazy things. So we had a lot of COs and it was nerve-wracking. You're eating and you're like shoving it down your throat. I already lost weight in nursing school, and then I like lost even more. I think I lost like another 10 pounds in my first year of nursing. And you know, you end up regaining some of that, like a bit of calm, but that carries on. Insomnia, once that day off, I would be sleeping like the whole day. It was very difficult to kind of manage that. And then again, my second and third time having it, I wasn't having like diarrhea, but I was having the palpitations and the anxiety at work and like before going to work, driving to work, and like, you know, being so overwhelmed by that. The second time I went through it, Dan and I were just starting to date, and he was like, you never, like, you know you have to work that day before. It's like, oh, I'm not leaving my room. And he'd be like, no, you're not going to be sleeping in the room, like eating in the room and doing everything.
It doesn't help. it makes it worse.
And
like,
he
I
wasn't
had
a nurse then.
Burnout from another job. I had burnout from a retail job where I'd have to wake up like way too early to go to
Is it
that
the
job.
same?
It's not exactly the same, but there are similarities where non-nurses or non-healthcare workers can relate. It's an unbalancing of work life. So like what you're saying there, like even in retail, I knew what that was like. Like I would work say Monday and Saturday night, right? Depending on what I was doing, I was like, damn, tomorrow's Sunday. Now I'm off Sunday, right?
Yeah.
I am off. But the thing is,
You don't want to go
I
anywhere,
don't want to go to sleep because I'm like, when I wake up, I have less than 24 hours before I got to be back at work.
Yeah. Other people in retail would always complain about this, is that like you close at and one night and then you're opening up like the
Yeah, they used to like to sandwich your days off. So it's like you close Friday if it was your weekend off and open Monday. So they inched in as much as they could into your weekend and then inched in to the end of your weekend as much as they can and sandwiched it. And it was just bad work-life balance, like I said.
But I bring that point up because in nursing, when you work nights, you kind of go through that. Because if you work Thursday nights, you don't leave till Friday, right? Friday morning. But then you're like, oh, I'm off Friday. But you go back, you might come back to work that Saturday. You're like, oh, I literally just left yesterday, even though I had a day off. And you're like, no, you had 24 hours off. Like, yo, you're good. But you feel like you didn't get a break because you left a completely different day.
The circadian rhythm thing and the whole changing back to days is difficult for certain people.
Yeah.
It's not as difficult for me, but it is difficult for people.
Yeah, it's a
but
lot.
to be honest,
People, yeah.
I had to work 3 months of day shift for orientation in one job, and I have to say it was kind of the same thing, like, because when you get home at 8:30 or something like that, right, and you got work the next day, say now I was off for one day, right, yeah, I left at like 7, right, then when I get home I'm exhausted, so I end up going to sleep early, right, and then that next day that I'm off, remember I gotta go to bed to get up at the butt crack of dawn, so I get the same amount of hours off, but there's no staying up and Netflix and chill and all of that.
If you're not a nurse and you're listening to us, right, or if you're a nursing student and you're like, oh, you know, you don't really think about some things, especially when you were working like a day shift, right, and you're like, oh, I need to run to the supermarket before I go home, right? You go and pick up a couple groceries, or you go stop and grab something to eat
it's 9:30, 10 o'clock before the time you hit home.
You shower, you go to sleep, you're like, oh, I still need downtime. Like, I want to watch a show. You're not going to bed until like maybe 12 o'clock.
Yeah, and then you got to be up by 5
And then you got to be up again until 5. All that works into your burnout, like, because you're physically tired, and then the burnout makes you feel fatigued, you know?
Yo. That makes, so I was going through a little bit of burnout one time, and I didn't care. If you said the wrong thing to me, I was gonna let you like know about, like, not hold back. And I didn't mean like let you particularly have it, but I wasn't gonna hold back and be like, you know what, don't say that to them, you know, whatever. And somebody was like, yo, I don't know how you work night shift, right? And they just they sent me off with this. And sorry, I apologize in advance to my day shift people.
Big up to my day shift people.
I went off on this poor girl. Like, I was like,
he told me this comment, and I was like,
what? You don't know how I work night shift. I don't know how you work day shift. You get paid less for doing it. All the damn managers are there. And I started going into all of these things that I hated about day shift. And I could see that once I was done,
she went from like,
I like crumbled her like.
Yeah.
Because she was like, yeah, you know, like you get off and like the whole, like your days are flipped. And I was like, yo, when I get off and I go to the store in the morning after work, nobody's there but old people. Like, it's the best thing in the world. When you get off, you're getting off with all the 9-to-5ers, fighting with them, trying to get into the stores. And by the time I was done with like talking about all the negatives, because both sides have negatives, right? I could tell that I like damaged her like outlook, and I felt bad because I was like, all I did just share my misery with her. Like, all I did was like, I'm going through burnout, and instead of just like defending myself,
you think you're better off, but let me show you that you're not better off.
I broke her damn glass menagerie.
That actually kind of like, it leads to like the whole what else happens when you are going on in your little burnout bubble, right? Number one, when you're burnt out, sometimes you don't even realize you're burnt out. Okay,
Yeah.
that's one thing.
That's the most dangerous.
That's
of,
the most
symptoms.
dangerous, right? Then the other part of it is, you know, you angry and burnt out, and then you start to like,
You share it. Yeah.
you like, you just want to let everybody know like what he did, and can't remember this woman's name, right? But even if I knew her name, I wouldn't be telling you. But this nurse, this was this second burnout, but this nurse, she used to come and float to our floor, and she was just so bubbly, and he used to piss me off. I'm gonna tell you that. In
That's
my
when
burnout,
you know you're miserable.
that's when you know, right? It would piss me off. She'd come and sit down, want to talk to me, and like, oh, how's your night going? And like giggle at everything. I'd be like, yo, what is so funny? What you giggling at? Like, what is so funny? Even my friend Kim was like, yo, why are you so angry? I'm like, I don't know. And it took me, literally, it took me her saying something that I then like realized, like, oh my god, I feel so bad about it. It's horrible, right? I don't understand it's horrible because the cloud has been lifted. I'm out of that phase of burnout, right? But one night she turned to me and she was like, like I said, this woman was always smiling, and she was tired. She was like, oh, I was doing a bunch of like overtime, and she was like, you know, some people don't know, like, you know, they see me come here and like always smiling and don't know why I'm always smiling. And she was like, the floor that she was on was so toxic. The nurse manager never cared for any of them. That was like supposed to be an overflow floor, and sometimes they close them and they float them, and this nurse manager was just, her goal was to get to a certain department and stuff like that. So her goal was not to maintain the patients, maintain her staff. That was not her goal, right? So she said eventually they closed the floor, and all the nurses, they were like, oh, these are your options. You could either find another floor, go to float pool. And she was just so happy because she was like, the environment was so toxic. She was so happy to then be in the float pool department where she could pick her schedule, where she can be like, oh, you know, can you send me to these floors? I like these floors. Like that they were flexible with her. And she said, that's why I'm so happy. That's why I come to the floor and I'm happy. And I know if I like the floor and I'm coming back tomorrow, I can maybe ask, you know, the staff, oh, can you send me back to that floor? Or if it's a horrible night, I don't have to come back to that floor. I have no connection to that. And I felt it clicked to me, like, I am taking out my anger about my current department, my floor, the toxicity of the floor, and not realizing that this woman had that same toxicity somewhere else, and I'm mad that she is in a different phase in her life. Isn't that horrible? And like, it like makes me sad that I was so angry at this woman. It's embarrassing. I know better, but in it, I was like pissed about it. And that's what makes me like...
But you don't know any better. You can't be mad at yourself. When you're doing it, you don't realize it.
It's
part of the burnout is
the
fog that it puts you in. You don't realize that you're
so
being
tunneled
miserable.
In your anger, exactly. Say it again.
The fog. You're stuck in that fog of your own misery that you don't realize that you're sharing this rain cloud with other people. Unfortunately,
to blame,
somebody that hasn't gone through it will just be like, yo, why is that bee so like miserable? But if you've been through burnout, then you can actually identify the fog and be like, oh, that person is being miserable with people, but they're in burnout and they might not see it.
But you know what? There's nurses that don't want to admit that burnout is a thing.
Because nurses be acting too tough.
Yeah.
This whole nonsense about like, there's no crying in nursing, and I don't know what that foolishness is, man. It just is part of, unfortunately, the toxicity in nursing is this denial of being vulnerable. Like, we're perfect people, you know, and like we are impervious. And if we didn't notice something, how could you have not noticed? Didn't you notice this vital sign was slightly off, or this one lab out of the 800 that I've run where this was obvious? And
so let's talk about causes. Extensive work and not feeling compensated, staffing shortages, traumatic patient situation, challenging / toxic work environment, feeling unappreciated, lack of respect by coworkers / administration and patients, etc.
There's one last one that I'm gonna add in there, and it actually connects back to all of those things. And what it is never stopping and acknowledging any of those things. If you don't stop and acknowledge, like, I'm in a toxic environment, I just went through a traumatic situation, whether it's a code or this, or running into a patient that reminds you too much of a family member, or whatever it is, and you just keep going as if like, nope, we're just gonna keep rocking with this because this is just every day.
Yeah.
Or not having anybody to relate to. Everybody else in your department is acting like Attack of the Pod people, so you're looking around like, yo, is no one else has a problem with this? Makes you feel crazy.
No. All right. So one night, right, I was like, again, just like, yo, this is ridiculous. Why am I here? Why am I doing this? I'm feeling unappreciated. This is just insane. Like, I can't be coming to work and having palpitations and like full on like, yo, I physically feel like I'm having palpitations. Like, this is crazy, right? And I'm like, why am I doing this? This can't be worth the money, right? The stress of this can't be worth the money. I was talking to Kim, right, about this, right? And two older nurses who I'm talking about like 30 years experience, right? Over here was talking, and they're like, which I rarely let other people hear us talk, because it's, you know, people willing to like, oh my gosh, complain to other people, and in Jamaica we used to call like sources, like, is gossip and stuff like that, right? And they heard us talking and they were like, oh yeah, we have palpitations too. And we're like, wait, what? You guys have been doing this for 30 years? And they're like, yeah, exactly, because when we started, nursing wasn't like that. And they had to admit that. And they were like, yeah, we have diarrhea, and we, like, I'm on anti-anxiety medications and all normal. That.
What is wrong
and I'm
with
like,
people?
wait, what? You guys are going through, they're like, yeah, we have palpitations all the time. Like, I go to a psychiatrist and this and that, and I'm like, why don't you talk to the younger generation of nurses and let us know that we're not the only ones, that it's not just us, like, because
they're too busy acting tough, like I said.
Yeah.
They
and
will
pretending like burnout
it's not a thing.
Yeah.
And the only people that acknowledge burnout are weak people. You're just not tough enough. Yeah. Or like they used to say this in EMT and fire, T-safe. This issue is not for everyone, and they act like, oh well, the second you run into something that you don't like or that's toxic, instead of complaining about it, if you can endure it, then this is not for you.
You're not strong enough.
You're not strong enough. Well, I'm not strong enough then. I'm sorry to tell you, because I'm not going to allow anything to do this. Listen, it's something that I learned from one of my favorite genres, if not my favorite genre of movie, right? Because it's a metaphor for life. You watch these people in horror movies do these things, like they buy a haunted house, and the first sign that they run into imminently something is wrong in this house. Yeah. The walls are bleeding. Something's crazy is happening, right? Like, there's always that one character that's like, no, well, there's a rational explanation. And you're like, what the hell are you talking about? We just saw the wall open up and the devil came out of the wall. And you're talking about there's a maybe the light was that. And there's always somebody at work doing that. Yeah. You'll complain and you'll be like, yo, this is not a real thing. This person's putting in this order, this and that. Whatever.
I've had people tell me, you're lucky you have a job. Okay, I'm lucky I have a job.
And that's what the metaphor in the horror movie is about. Like, they're trying to show you how absurd that person is. Because they're saying, well, I've worked so hard to get here, to get my license, to get to this job, right? And I'm going to have to go through interviews and be new and go through orientation somewhere else if I leave here.
We both have done that, right? That whole, like,
and I'm not going to say it's easy to leave. It's not easy to leave. Yeah. You know, we all tend to want to know our job. We hate being new, right? But it's not worth palpitations and diarrhea, okay? Being a new person sucks, but it doesn't suck as bad as palpitations and diarrhea and anxiety and hating your job. And
remember, this was happening before work, right? This is happening when you're at home, when you're in your, like, safe space. It's something that I used to tell
Once it starts intruding in your safe space, cut it off.
Is the ICU fatigue, the beeping sounds.
Lisa found a different name from me. I just found like it's like hospital beep syndrome they call it. But Lisa found
alarm fatigue or hospital beep syndrome. You found hospital.
So I used to come home.
I used to come home and literally I'd have my eyes closed and I'm hearing beep 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 beep, beep like all of it. I wake up, I'm looking around, I'm like, is there a pump beeping? I know I'm not insane.
I think the only reason why I'm immune to this, as a gamer, growing up as a gamer, we would have fatigue from sounds. Like, you would turn off your game and, like, hear, you know, like, the one-up, do-do-do-do-do, and all this, like, sounds in your head. So you've gotten used to being able to dump those sounds away.
Can I tell you when my last burnout, I guess, since you know, and it wasn't like a full-on burnout, but I knew I was getting there, right?
That's the other thing. There's major burnout and there's mini burnouts. Those little burnouts of like, yo, I just worked 6 days straight or something. That'll cause a burnout.
Yeah.
You need a break.
And you need the reset.
Yeah, and you need a reset.
But the last one that I had was since we moved up here, and I started working before Dan when we first got up here. And I was like, let me start working first, because then I can get my schedule kind of like go through the orientation first, and then you can do your orientation, right? So when I started, and I was like, oh, I don't think I'm ready for this, right? No, I'm like, I need to take a break, right? I need to take a break again. So I left, and I would call Dan at work, and I'd hear like the beeping sounds, and I'm like, nah, I gotta call you back. Call me when you're out of that room or wherever you are. You don't remember that? Mm-hmm. Just the sound would trigger me into be like, yo, I can't hear what you're saying. Like, you know, like Peanuts where it's like, wah, wah, wah. Like, I can't hear anything you're saying. Literally all I can hear is the alarms going off. And in my brain, it's like, I want to help. You can't focus.
All right, so one time I was working at this place, right? The provider ordered something for... A provider is like a doctor or somebody who can prescribe things, right? Mm-hmm. So the provider ordered something, and like, but what I found particularly annoying in my burnout from this place was that like they would just not have things, and then like it was just kind of like everybody would treat it like, oh yeah, well we just don't have that, we got to figure it out, right? And in nursing you're not always gonna have everything, right? But like,
especially if you work
simple
pandemic,
things. Simple
there were a lot of things we didn't have.
And like they would take advantage of this. I felt like instead of trying to do their best to be in stock, that like you would just figure it out, that they would just be like, oh well, we just hire a bunch of MacGyvers to figure out how to do this thing without stuff. I told you, like, I had gotten to a point where like I wasn't holding back. So it's like my my nurse manager was there and standing up there, and like we're like, oh yeah, we don't have this supply or whatever. And I was like, I turned towards one of the other nurses and the nurse manager and I think the doctor. All those people are standing there, and I was like, yo, is this a real place? It's like, do we really just don't have, like, where do we work? It's like a basic supply. Yeah, like, where do we work? We don't have this. And it was weird because I still to this day don't know how I feel about this. I realized that the reason that I expressed myself was part of like trying to let go of like a little bit of steam from my burnout. But what aggravated me was how aggravated my nurse manager was with the comment.
Okay, yeah, because that also can fuel the burnout. Is their reaction like, to you?
Instead of them being...
How did they react? Say how they reacted.
They responded so disappointed that I said that. And I was like, hold on, so let me get this straight. You're not disappointed with the fact that we don't have this basic, simple supply that we need to have, that's crucial, that is actually ridiculous that we don't have it. You're upset with me that I would express that I would be negative in a way. And it aggravated the piss out of me. Like, I was so annoyed. I was like, yo, you are so indoctrinated and have your head so far up your own butt that you're annoyed by my negativity rather than the fact that we don't have this. Like, be a real person. Like, let's clock out and look me in the eye. Blink twice if you need some help, because you just seem like you're unrealistic. And when you're around those like pod people that are acting like, no, you just need to change your mindset. No, there's nothing wrong here. Everywhere is like this. You just gotta toughen your skin, and you're looking at them and you're like, yo, you are creeping me out, bro.
That restricts you and makes you feel like so alone and like,
instead of just being like, all the nurse manager had to do was lean in and be like, yeah, I know. Man. Like,
and the thing is, you're not the nurse manager is not the one that's physically ordering things like
so I don't know why they took it that personal.
Like, you don't have to take it that way. Like, just be like, yeah, understand, team. Like, we are all a team, right? So, like, we're gonna kind of just get into the whole, like, how do we prevent that, right? You can't really prevent it from ever happening, because I feel like in your nursing career, it's bound to happen. If it doesn't, you're blessed, and be blessed, continue to be blessed, but don't belittle the people that are going through it. One of the things I can say is the biggest part of processing your burnout is acknowledging that you are burnt out. And if you're not aware of, like, you know, the symptoms and stuff like that, rewind what we just said and like, oh, is that me? Like, damn, yeah. Oh, that's what I was going on 5 months ago, 6 months ago. So acknowledging that, like, it is a thing and that we need to actively work on it. So I'm gonna hit through some things that I researched that are ways to prevent it or work through it when you are going through it. Is acknowledging the burnout, self-care, and that could be a spa day, bubble baths, time in nature, sleeping, journaling, reading, a glass of wine. Make the most of your time off. Speak to someone, if it's your coworkers, your family, or a medical professional. Sleep, exercise, and have fun. There's just one thing that I wanted to jump into real quick is speak to your family. Dan and I had something the other day, recently, literally like a couple days ago, where he was talking about something that it sounded like burnout. It literally sounded like, oh my gosh, you're burnt out. And I've been doing more hours at work, which, you know, I like to be primarily a stay-at-home mom. But those more hours starts to stress my body, and I am like skirting the edge of like, it's gonna be burnout.
Oh yeah.
Right?
And
he was complaining about something, and I literally was like, I cannot hear this right now. I'm sorry, babe. I cannot. I need to talk to you later. And I had to hang up the phone. And after like literally a couple minutes, I was like, I knew hanging up the phone and like cutting him off was hurtful, but it really was like I needed to protect my peace at the moment, right? So I was like, I feel horrible because, again, going back to something we said earlier, is when you work for the same hospital system, you can like, okay, but when you work in the same hospital, he was complaining about something that I was like, I gotta go to work tomorrow night. So when you talking about things, it was busy or whatnot, I know that affects me my next shift. And I was like, I already don't want to go to work tomorrow. So hearing that, it was like triggering me like, oh no, this is good. No, tomorrow's gonna be just shitty.
But
like,
I think that's
can't.
the difficulty of both of you having the same profession.
That's what I'm saying.
Because
so like it said family.
While you can relate to each other if you have the same profession, and like I can understand at a level that I wouldn't understand if I was a teacher or something else, right? The problem becomes like you're saying, you go through this guilt where it's like, yo, like I'm not at work, right? But if I'm listening to you vent about work, whether you're not at work or not, that's even more hours that I have being subjected to work.
So when you're talking about those days off, when you're talking about those days off, I'm still clocked in because I'm connected to him. And I need him to vent, because if he's not venting, then he's bottling up, and that's building the burnout. I'm either
bottling up, or I'm finding somebody else to express myself to that can cause, you know, fissures in your relationship. You know, whatever.
I will say that the hospital nurses that we're working for right now, as with a lot of hospitals nowadays, they are providing, our hospital, we have like 5 sessions a year that we can speak to psychiatrists or psychologists, and then if you need more, then the insurance will kind of cover that, whatever they cover. So people are making an effort, you know, hospitals are making an effort to kind of help us, because we are disappearing from the bedside.
Yo, it's getting rough out here, and I'll tell you why it's getting so rough out here too. I'll tell you how I know it's getting rough out here is when I tell people that I'm a nurse, they now treat me like when they hear that like I was in the military. I hear people give me like, thank you for your service. The same way they tell service people that. And like, we tell our people that because they are in like combat situations and like willing to put their life on the line in defense of the greater good of people. So like, I agree with it, but like it shows you the bracket in which people are putting us in now. You know, they're like, oh, you're a nurse? Oh, you work in the this, that, or the ER? You're a nurse? Thank you for your service. And while I acknowledge and I appreciate the acknowledgement, there's also that weird like, damn, it's so bad now that other people are starting to acknowledge, like, because in a way, they say it in 2 ways. They say it like gracefully, like, thank you for your service. And then there's also like a backhanded way of saying thank you for your service, as in like, you better than me. You better than me, because I don't know how you do it.
Again, one of the hospitals that we worked at, it was like, I remember growing up, because my father worked there, it was like to say that you were from this hospital, it was like, oh, you're a nurse there? It's like, ooh, to the point it reached where it was like, oh, you're a nurse there? Ooh, you know, like, oh gosh, like, that place is awful, like, you know, and it affects you, because then you feel like, oh, I was so proud to be a nurse from this hospital.
Which is crazy, because sometimes that comes from a nurse where you're like, where are you a nurse? And they name it and you're like, wait, you feel sorry for me?
Yeah.
Buddy.
But that is, you know what? Let's get into, I have another topic. Protecting your peace, right? 2 elements of it. When it's time to walk away from your department versus your specialty versus your hospital versus when it's time to walk away from nursing.
Yeah.
Okay? Those are two different things, right? So remember, walk away from the department, the specialty, the hospital. For me, I understood walking away from the department, the last department I worked for, in that I tried my best to get off of that floor. It was horrible. I did enjoy the specialty, and that is actually one of the specialties that I work with now. So I still enjoy the specialty. I should have let go of the hospital, even though it was like, again, tied to this like hospital system that my father worked at and my sister and my aunts worked at. Like, it was something to be proud of, right? But I should have said, you know what, I need to walk away from that.
But even leaving and coming back, like, yo, like one of the things that we need to talk about now is like our nursing is different from our parents or like our grandparents nursing. So this whole like, oh, I've been at this hospital sitting for 12 years. Listen, if you at anywhere for longer than 2 years, I'm going to tell you something. Shop around. I'm not saying to leave, but shop around.
Yeah.
Because
know
even
your
if
worth.
you love where
know
you
your
love
worth.
it. Yeah.
Know your worth and know that, like, especially in this day and age, I'm always telling my babies, like, yo, get your year, the least.
Yeah.
2 years, kind of cement that specialty and that confidence, and then you travel. Go anywhere.
You could travel, or you
like,
could even have the intention of coming back, right?
Yeah, I'm not saying to be a travel nurse and like you go like I do 13 weeks everywhere. I've been to every state. I'm not saying that. I'm saying travel and know, like, okay, well, I could just go to another hospital. I could go to another county. Like, oh, they're paying me $5 more over here, and I have one less patient. That is mind-blowing when it comes to, you know, to some hospitals. Because
you know what's sad about that is that we have now become the generation where they treat you like cell phone carriers. They reward you for being new there. So it's like, sometimes you got to leave that hospital system. You got to leave H&H hospital system, even though you love it, because when you leave there and go somewhere else where they're willing to hire you into the specialty that you want to do for H&H, right? A and B hire you over there and they'll give you a bump and raise, and then when you go back to H&H...
Let me tell you a joke. I left a hospital, getting paid good money, left, right? Came back, how many months later? Couple months later, and they rehired me and I got a raise, and I was like, if I was still working there, you think I wouldn't have gotten that raise?
You might have gotten a raise, but not that raise.
They would have given me a couple cents raise. They wouldn't have given me $5 raise. It was a $5 raise. They wouldn't have been given, like...
And the worst thing is, you didn't even leave them to go to somewhere else.
I didn't.
You just like a break and came back. Like, that was the worst thing.
So that's the thing. It's like, you know, knowing that and being like aware of that. You know, I knew someone that left one of our old hospitals, right, and went to another hospital for 6 months.
Yeah, exactly.
And
6
came
to 12
back
months.
and got in like an associate nurse manager position, an assistant nurse manager position.
What I thought Lisa was gonna bring up was the other thing they'll do is like they'll wait till you're like about to leave and you put in your like 2 to 4 weeks, and then they want to match what you're like, fam, if you had just did that, I wouldn't be leaving.
Well, no. Okay, so my first job that I gave my 2 weeks, and I was so afraid because, you know, I was like, oh, I don't want anybody to come talk to me about it. So I put, you know, the letter in the nurse manager's door, right? And I was like, okay, I did like right before I left, right? You know, she called me. She was like, Lisa, you know, we were gonna start training you to be, you know, in charge, and you know, I see great potential in you, and what is this hospital that you're leaving for, what are they gonna pay you? I will give you that and more, right? And I was like,
but you wouldn't have got that offer unless you put it in 2 weeks.
You know, but that's so degrading. It makes me, and even to this moment, it still made me angry, because it shows that you have the ability and the stretch to take care of your staff, to go above and beyond and say, you know what, I want to pay you more.
But why
right?
are they're not incentivized?
They're not. They're like, oh, well, you're gonna take the and back, you know, like, you're gonna laugh. Back then it was like $23, $24 or something like that as a brand new nurse. No, I think it was like $22, $23, something like that, right? And I was leaving for this hospital and thinking like, oh, I'll be making good money. Like, ah. And back then at that hospital, you had evals every year. And you know what the maximum raise that they would give you was 25 cents.
Because ultimately, acquisition is better than retention.
Yeah. So like the cell phone. Yeah. This is the cell phone.
Even though
metaphor.
you left before, you left and you're coming back, you're an acquisition. If you've left for a certain amount of time, you're a new hire.
Yeah.
in their book, right? Even though you might have even came back to a pension or to a retire, you are and acquisitions are more important to them than retention.
Which
That's
is sad.
Unfortunately
Which
how
is
they
something
do it.
that also adds to that pool of burnout. Is you feel like, why are you not trying to maintain the people that are here? You know?
I don't care.
And some hospitals, like I've heard some horror stories. Some hospitals, some of these new nurses are coming in and making what you making, and you've been there 5-10 years, or making more than you, and that's sad.
Yo, one time I was working at this place, right? And this person was they were the manager for the night, right? And my coworker had hit the roof, and she told me this story, right? And she's like, yo, she walked up to him, she had it up to here. I looked at him, and I was like, I'm gonna effing quit. He jumped out of his chair, and he was like, no, check it out. He's mad chill, right? And he's like, or he was mad chill. I hope he's still like that. And he was like, no, go take a half an hour break, get your head together. And she's like, I'm over here drowning, blah, 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 whatever. And he just quickly, with a wave of a wand, he was like, yo, I'm going to get this person, come help you. Go take your break. This person will cover you. Da, 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 boom, boom, boom. And I thought it was good management on his part to do that, right? Yeah. But again, why I bring that up right after the 2 weeks and the whole we were gonna was the aggravation was he had the ability to do this before she had hit the roof and before she had hit the like.
That's where I'm saying it. The systemic continuation of it happening all the time. So do I have to say I'm gonna quit every night? How often do you take that to the point where you're like, again, asking yourself, is it time for me to walk away from the department, the specialty, the hospital, or the nursing profession? And I always tell people, like, never walk away, like, always keep your license.
Oh, but I agree. Keep your license.
There's a beauty behind, like, oh, there's so many different specialties, but the reality is some specialties are hard to get into. There's people that gatekeep that. They're, you know, dialysis is one of those. Labor and delivery is another one that it's hard to get people in it. And because those people really don't retire, they're like, oh, I like my specialties, right? So it's like, is it okay to be like, nah, I'm retired? Like
you could say I'm arguing semantics here, right? But I'm going to say specifically, keep your license, but you might need to walk away from nursing, whether permanently or temporarily. Yeah. Because nursing is so broad that you might not have to be at bedside or in nursing and still need your license to do something totally different.
Because there's case management there's some case management that they want your nursing
tech is changing.
Profession.
There's a lot of things that you could do in.
If you want us to do a whole pod on that of like all the things that you can do in nursing, there's some things that I even forget. There is a place for everyone, but just be aware when you are getting those burnout symptoms or you're just like, I don't like this place. Know that you do have options out there. And to the babies out there, to the newbies, and I'm not talking about babies as in like you're young, because you could be 45 and like, oh, I just started nursing, and is this really what I want to do? Ask yourself those things. Go through the burnout questionnaires or the things that I just kind of described here. And if it's something that you're like, yeah, I'm going through that, and you cannot process it through the psychiatrist that you're talking to, psychologist you're talking to, oh, I'm doing yoga, I'm meditating, I'm doing whatever you're doing on the outside to make yourself feel better, and it's not working, go through that steps. Go through the steps of, maybe I should be changing department.
And remember, a lot of
maybe
this is
I'm
subjective.
Specialty.
It's subjective. Just like toxicity is subjective.
Yeah.
I worked in corrections, and there has been moments at other jobs that I've missed corrections. Yeah. And there's people that'll think corrections is toxic because you're in a hazardous I worked in a pre-trial jail, right? Where these people aren't always sentenced, so they are in the wildest. They're trying to establish themselves. They're saying they're innocent.
I know, but they're like.
Well, everybody in jail, according to them, is innocent. But like, it's also like they're not in the stretch yet. So a lot of the wildness and toughness and hypermasculinity and toxic behavior.
I'm gonna be out soon. Don't worry about me and like.
Because they're trying to establish their hierarchy. Whereas in like a longer term prison, They know they're there for a stretch.
Yeah.
They're a little bit more calm in situations. It's still a toxic, and to some other people, or to like the female nurses that were doing what I was doing, they were being subjected to sexual harassment that I wasn't getting from some of those male inmates, right? So like I could never really fully empathize with when they were getting burnout syndromes from like guys doing things to them that was like uncalled for. But that's why it's subjective. Like that to me wasn't as toxic as it was to the female nurses that were doing what I was doing. And then the RNs were living a totally different experience to the LPNs in corrections, right? Because they're doing a different job.
In the clinic,
they stay in the clinic while we were going up on the floors and having to give like 200 people different meds and all of this kind of stuff. Your burnout and your toxicity is up to what you tolerate and what is your brand. You might be okay with 5 patients and somebody else might be like, no, I can't do that.
Yeah, exactly.
You might be okay with not talking to your co-workers, and somebody else be like, no, that's where I draw the line at. Like, I can't go somewhere where I don't have any friends and whatever. You might be okay with, you know, a nurse manager that is this way, and it's like, oh, I don't really work with that nurse manager anyway. So it's all subjective. There's no one definitive thing that's gonna set off every nurse. So some people might be looking at something, just being on night shift might be toxic to somebody.
Yes. Oh, I didn't even add that. I need to add that. So hospital, department, specialty, shift. Like some people might be like, you know what? Mid-shift works better for me.
You could be sold on the idea that you are like, yo, I'm not a night shift person, but you get up every morning and you're miserable as hell. You're drinking coffee, you're tired out of your mind, and then you switch to nights and you realize like, oh, well,
this is
where it's at. Like, I don't have this person breathing down my neck. It could be a small change. It could even be just the way you're doing your schedule. I've had a couple of people.
That's another one.
That's
Damn,
a couple of people.
So again, hospital, specialty, department, shift, schedule. I was working the first burnout, I was working Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Maybe coming into work one day, off one day, off one day. That might work for you. Change it. That is
Try changing small things before you think that like, oh, I gotta walk away from nursing. Before you go all the way up here, maybe I gotta change my shift. Maybe I just gotta change my schedule and stop working Mondays. Mondays ain't for me. Maybe I gotta avoid when this person is the nurse manager. And I don't really work well with their leadership. Right? So I gotta like, yo, Bob, when you work? You work Tuesday, Thursday, Friday? Okay, I can't work them days. Right? It could be a small change that'll keep you from burnout.
That's it. I'm telling you.
Corrections, I worked what they call a 3-4. Now I work a 3-3. So a 3-4 is we work 12-hour shifts, right? So 1 week you work 3 12s, so 36 hours, and the next week you work 4 12s. You work the 48 hours. So when I got down to 3-3, I was like, yes, this is awesome, right? Sometimes people will do is they'll bunch their days together. And what it'll do is, even though you have this long block of days that you work, you end up with these long blocks of days off without requesting like time off. So if like, if you take your 3 days and put like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, right? But you put it next to the end of your last one, which was I worked Friday, Saturday, and then I worked Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. I've worked 5 days straight, right? But I just knocked out my whole week.
From last week and this week coming,
all together. So next week, I could go all the way until like Thursday before I have to hit my first working day. And I was like, this is great. I'm off for 8 days and I'm not even scheduled. But like, by the time I hit like day 4, I'm like, bro, what the hell? I hate this thing and whatever. And I was like, yo, I gotta stop doing this. So I stopped doing that. I only bunched like 2 days together, and then I'd have one random day where I was work on and off, and I was and that was enough to hold me back from a little bit of burnout. And you know what was crazy was at a certain point I was like, nah, I gotta start bunching my days together again so I could have long strings of days off.
Because I had major burnouts. So like my second one, this was the first one or whatever. So the second one, I remember I was doing a bunch of overtime. And it's like when you do that, and I'm talking about 6 days off one day, because I'd be like, yo, I don't work Fridays, right? 6 days straight, off one day, another 6 days straight. On your regular days to work, you're like, I want to call out. Yeah. But you can't, because it's your regular day to work. And it's like, oh, well, I want to pay off my car insurance or whatever in one paycheck or whatever. So you have these like things tied to that. Like if you are the type of person like, I want to buy this new Louis Vuitton bag or whatever, or I'm going on a cruise, a 10-day cruise, which a lot of nurses and stuff like that, they do those because we have the ability to, because of how much money we make. We kind of can splurge some, right? So some people are willing to do some of these crazy 13 days and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, you got a new Louis Vuitton bag, but was that worth it? And was that physically worth it? Was like, yeah, you got a financial gain. And it might
be. Like I said, it's subjective. It might be.
Where are you going? Where you, like, this is another thing. My old hospital, I haven't seen this here, but my old hospital, these same women that work in, women and men, let me not say it, but it was the women that were doing this, come to work with their Louis Vuitton bag and Fendi bag and stuff like that. Oh, all the work that you're doing, you bringing those designer bags to work? It's not like you're saying, I'm bringing that designer bag to go to like a fancy restaurant on South Beach. You know, like I'm going shopping on Rodeo this weekend. What told
me that was corrections. It was like, I remember I had these like Bobo looking shoes, and like, you know, you'd have inmates that were cool, and you'd have some inmates that would try to be like, what kind of shoes are those? And I was like, bro, you think I'm gonna wear something good to this job? Yeah. Like, look at what this is, bro. Yeah. Like, I'm coming to a jail.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, what do you think I'm gonna do? I mean, you think I'm gonna wear some Jordans in here? You think I'm gonna wear some Nike Shox in here? Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
So yeah, try small tweaks. The answer isn't always, I've got to leave nursing, even though it might be feeling that way when you're feeling burnout. You're like, maybe this job is not for me. But literally, maybe that particular job, or that job at that time with that nurse manager, with that shift, maybe those things, or maybe that's all you need to do and change.
So to put weight on that comment is really that, like you said that so perfectly, is start with the small before you jump to I'm leaving nursing.
Yeah.
Like the other day I was speaking to a girlfriend of mine, and she was talking about her friend who's like, I'm done. I'm leaving nursing. I'm not even going to renew my license. And I was like, no. I really wanted to be like, give me her number, all right? Because we gonna have a talk. Like, not saying that you not grown and you can't do what you want to do, but we worked so hard. Every single one, even no matter how you're like, oh, I was so smart. Nursing school was a thing for everybody, unless you bought your degree like some of these people. But it was a thing, right? It was something that wasn't the easiest. So don't lose track of that. You worked hard for it. You got where you are. There are nurses that are living it up in some specialty, in some hospital. Find what is going to fit for you, or find what you're going to be able to tolerate. But don't walk away from the profession, because besides that, like, it is a great profession, but it's like you are making a difference in like the future. Like, you're making a difference to people's health. That is something that, like, my family call me super nurse. That's something I always say, like, we make such a difference in the communities that we, you know, provide care to. So please hold on to your license. You might not like it now, you might not like it for the next 5 years, but you always have that to go back to. Never let go of your license.
I agree to an extent, but I'm not gonna be as, I guess, as positive, and I'm also gonna be a little bit more nuanced. I would say never, because you might find 1 or 2 scenarios where it's time to hang it up, and don't feel like that could never be the answer. Don't allow anybody to tell you, because that could lead to hopelessness if it could never possibly be the answer, right? It could be the answer, but it should be the very last answer that you go to. And the difference, why I say the difference between your license and nursing, is you can stop nursing.
Yeah, that's
right.
Yeah, that's exactly.
But your license might require you to be like, they might hire you as a experienced nurse to overlook paperwork, and you're never touching.
There's like a whole department that's all they do. Like,
yeah,
you might like that. I would hate that, but sometimes you need that nursing knowledge.
You could be working in,
you could work for Joint Commission, you could work for like organizations like ACA and stuff like that want your nursing experience and your nursing license. So you're not, this is something that Dan used to complain about when he was in nursing school. Number one, they always talk about it in regard to like day shift, right? Everything is about day shift. Oh, this is going to be having day shift, right? When we know that there are 12-hour shifts, there's 8-hour shifts, there's 10-hour shifts, there's
like every scenario is like the night nurse is giving you a report and they messed up this and that. And I was like, well, the first 2 nurses that I knew like on a personal basis were night nurse people. So it's like this nonsense of teaching school as if like, no, not only are you destined for bedside, but you're destined to be bedside on day shift.
And that's it, is bedside. Your first job in nursing doesn't even have to be bedside.
Yeah, there's no requirement.
We choose to do bedside, right? But you don't have to. You can go to nursing school and say, you know what? I am going to just use that knowledge I have and get into nursing cybersecurity or some type of IT department. Home health.
I'm gonna do.
You don't have to do
case
bedside
management.
And that can be very restricting to someone that's coming out. And there's people that go to nursing school and they're like, oh, I did my last clinical before they graduate, and they're like, I hate 12-hour shifts. I hate night shift. I hate day shift. I hate bedside. Okay, there's specialties out there.
There's still a job for you.
You can work in a doctor's office. There's some people that do like to work as like medical assistants but be a nurse, you know, like, and there's some doctor's offices that want to hire nurses instead of medical assistants because they want to be able to have them draw blood and give medications and stuff like that. So look into that. Bedside is not for everyone, and we need bedside nurses, and I want more nurses to be in bedside, because if we don't have enough, that's where we have these nursing shortages, and this is what aids in burnout. If we don't have people at the bedside, you know,
I think that's the only thing that's different about the way we look at nursing. I think the 2 of us might love nursing, but I don't have no feeling about even saying you might love nursing more than I do, but even if we're not comparing who loves it more, like, I think the difference in the way that we love nursing is like, I have a little bit more nuance to the fact that like I'm always positive to people that want to be nurses. When I talk to like techs, when I talk to other people that are in nursing school, I never say anything bad about nursing, right? But I won't BS you about like
the reality of
nursing. And the thing is, like,
and that's what we want to be able to do in this forum, is to be able to communicate that these are the things, and help people realize that you're not alone when you're going through these like, oh, I'm having these thoughts where I feel like this isn't for me. No, you can have 20 years of nursing and you're like,
and still feel like, yo, I still don't know this, or I forgot this, why did I forget this, or whatever. But like, I'm also like, nursing gotta help itself, you know what I mean?
So
like,
what I'm gonna say is, we love nursing, but I am like, you know, and maybe there's a sick part of it, is like, I'm like, yo, I want to bring other people to nursing. I want to, you know, like, let's do this together. Let's work together.
That, but I want nursing
he wants to scream out loud on like a platform and be like, this is the problem. This is how we fix it. And I'm for that, but I'm also like, I want to maintain who we have, right?
Yeah.
But also encourage others to come in. I call him like my politician sometimes.
Before I stand up for something, right, and put my life on the line, I need you to also put some effort
something
into
out there.
Put some effort worth defending, because, and maybe it's a selfishness, maybe it's arrogance, I don't know what it is, but like, it's like I said, like, Lisa is like teammate that's like, yo, all right, we're like 6-0 down, we're losing bad, we're drowning, but let's keep going, we're not giving up. But I am also the type of person that's like,
you're like, no.
Oh wait, hold on. If I stop rowing, this boat gonna stop moving. I'll jump out. I'm good. I'll jump out. I know how to swim. I'll find something else.
But what about your other team members though?
But that's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like that's another thing that's like toxic in nursing, is like, people will do this thing where, I remember when I was working this one particular job, and we were a specialty, and there was just a few of us. So whenever you needed to call out, there was this heightened sense of guilt that like, when you call out, the other 3 people are gonna have to take up the slack. And I was like, yo, you know what's not fair to me is that I got to now say to myself, like, hell or high water, unless I'm on my deathbed, I'm not gonna call out because I'm concerned and I feel guilty for my coworkers. But the management and the company didn't seem to care that like that was the case.
So another part of that, like that burnout, is that you need to call out for your mental health day, right? And you're like, well, I know everybody else is struggling at work. You need to take care of yourself.
Yeah,
self-care.
Yo, what happened to the management?
Have your manager, like, that should not be a priority for you, right? The hospital system should have agency people or per diem or float pool, whatever, to staff that. Don't think about that. I've been on a floor where what happened when you call out, oh my gosh, how many people call out?
But
and
that's
you feel
toxic.
That's toxic.
That's toxic, because the thing
is, and then you come back to work and they're like, oh my gosh,
down.
We had so many patients and
that building's
admissions.
not gonna fall down.
Okay.
I literally, that place I worked at had the year that the building was built on it, right? And it had some ancient number on there, right? Some crazy like 1940 something, 1930. Sorry to my old people that are born in that year or whatever, right? But what I realized when I used to walk in and look at the number that the year of the building was built, right? Is the reality is that building and that company have all intentions of being there when I'm in my grave. So my thing is, for me to act like I'm the glue holding up this building, if I call out it's gonna be the end of the world, is like, or like I would even get ish from people when I come back, like, come back, yo, you really called out? I was like, yo, fam, why you mad at me?
Yeah.
What you should be mad at is the fact that if one of us call out, there's no coverage. There's no staff to cover nobody doing anything about that.
Yeah, that they're just like, oh, you're gonna deal with it.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And these are things that we're speaking of pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
During pandemic and post-pandemic. Pandemic, we kind of had to struggle, right? And we understood we had to struggle. But post-pandemic, some hospital systems have realized that they can manage with this skeleton crew, right?
Yeah, or they can lean on your guilt to try to fix the problem that's their responsibility.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, if I'm like, oh wait, so the organization ain't gonna get us a bus to get to this game? Oh, so we not getting the proper rest, we don't have the proper equipment to try to win this game? Well, I ain't gonna waste my effort on trying to win this game. I'm not gonna put my all in and die on the field, and they're not even trying to help us out. You are trying to use my guilt or obligation I feel against my coworker, and they know that they can lean on that, they're gonna use that.
Yeah.
You know, like
and that's also another thing in the burnout is that built of like coworker against coworker. Yeah. Right? That we are a team, but you called out.
You're the enemy, not the fact that they
didn't
they didn't get restaffing or something.
I called from 12 o'clock. I was at a job. Found staffing.
I was at a job one time. We lost a nurse, and then on that rotation, we had 3 nurses, and it was like that for like 2 months until like one day on day shift, I was like, yo, so are y'all ever gonna replace this nurse? Because we make it happen, right? But the problem is, the more and more that we make it happen and we keep fixing it, y'all act like, oh, this is not an issue, they got this. While the other shift got 4 nurses doing the same job. Now, if you want to break it down and get me more pay for doing that, then fine. But don't keep on thinking I'm gonna make it work because of that.
Alright, so I'm gonna reel that one in, right? That was on the list of things, right? Is that like not feeling compensated, right? If 7 patients, if you're on a med-surg floor, like, I believe safe staffing, I'm going to kind of run through this for people that are like non-nurses or like nursing students, is if it's a med-surg floor, 5 to 6 patients, 6 maximum. If it's like a specialty like a PCU, 2 to 3, 4 maximum. And then if it's like an ICU, 1 to 2. States like California have these mandated in the state laws and stuff like that. So pandemic, they learned they can push you to 7 to 8 patients in med-surg. PCUs pushing you to 5 patients. That's not normal, and that's like a normal thing. And I'm like why? Get staff. If you have 7 patients and you're supposed to be getting your 5 to 6 patients in a med-surg, right? Paying you more, would that make it better?
That's what I'm saying. I'm gonna walk back that because I was kind of saying that facetiously, like if but they were just to say
that
like
that's okay, and it's like,
but you think it is until it's not.
But that's what I'm saying. You're paying me more, and I'm risking my license more and more. The more patients you have, the more responsibility you have, and the more you're stretching yourself. Simultaneously, right? Like I said, I don't know about anybody else, but me, I work hard in nursing school to pass that, okay? I did it in a year, so I work hard. I refuse to lose my license and have to go sit in front of no board and explain anything.
2 really sick patients, then have 5 medium sick patients, because that's 5 different people.
5 mouths that you're giving medications to. That's 5 people that gotta use the bathroom. That's 5 people that I could mix up with 4 other people. That's, when I got 1 or 2, I was over there. I have a man and a woman. But then if I have 5 patients, that's like, all right, wait, which one of them did I give this to?
Or who did they order this for? Wait, am I mixing up this girl and that girl? Or am I looking at the wrong profile when I walk in there? I know I'm on this and that and whatever. So as much as I facetiously said like, yo, am I getting paid more?
But
it's
I like
not
that
just
you said
about
it.
the pay
I like
more.
that you said it because there are people that are okay with that. And that's what leads to the burnout, is that you're like, well, they pay me. And you keep pushing and you keep pushing until you reach a point where you're like, I'm getting paid more, but I am risking everything.
It ain't worth it.
It's not worth it.
It's not even just the risk. It's just the management of a job that was not intended to be done by one person. Is now being split up in.
I had this, this nurse manager left nursing school at like 20 and like retired on this floor. And she said, oh, when we started at night, we had 10 patients. Like, she'd be so proud. I've heard her say this story multiple times. So one morning she came and she made this comment again or whatever. And I said to her, I said, how many medications were you giving to those patients? Oh, at night, maybe 1 medication, 2 medication. And then, in the morning, you clean them up and that's it. You have 6 patients, right?
Yeah, people got to stop doing that.
You giving them 7 medications, hypertension medications, diabetic medications. You giving antibiotics, you doing wound care. Mind blown. On 6 patients,
this leans into something that even non-nurses can relate to, because this is that boomer disconnect that I'm talking about. And I'm not just talking about boomers specifically, but we use that because this is the big divide between like the boomer generation as they age into retirement now, and them like, back in my day we did this and this, and I'm like, there's this huge
hospital for 40 years.
Back in my day, and the memory of something and how something is now, right? So for example, what was it worth back then? Like when you're like, oh, we had 10 patients. Yo, that sounds insane, right? But what was charting like, right? What were they expecting to? Yeah,
that's it. Check.
What were they expecting you to do?
Yeah.
Were you ticking a box, or were you have this long list of things they expect you to put in the computer, and it was time itemizing?
You ever had paper charting? You or something?
Yeah, I did. Remember they had it at long-term care. There's a difference between that and like this itemized, like they can see that you did the vitals at
this time
at 4 and it's 2 hours behind time frame or half an hour behind, and why didn't you do the vitals? Paper charting was tedious, but paper charting and this like computer charting,
I'll take paper charting any day.
Is 2 different things. Like glove and wear a mask and do all this kind of stuff was different from back in the pre-AIDS when like people were starting IVs with no gloves and doing all kind of stuff. The game has changed, so you need to evaluate.
So I think that's
this
also
memory
the other thing
of
is
what
that
used to be.
Don't allow other people to hold on to this like Florence Nightingale beautiful nursing and make you feel little by expressing the fact that you're like, yo,
and as older nurses stop doing that. One thing I've learned is as I'm getting to become this older generation, I can't watch these young people, even if they're making mistakes or they're doing young people things, and go like, oh, that wasn't happening in my generation. You sound like the same people that used to chastise you. You're now turning into those people. Be aware of that. Beware of how annoying it used to sound to hear. Like,
the thing is, the reality
back in my day, they did things perfectly.
The reality is, 15 years ago, like I said, almost 15 years now I've been a nurse. Nursing has changed a lot, and I'm aware of that. And I'm like, for the next generation, I'm like, oh, I'll tell you what I went through because it was better back then. Like there were this and this, you can do this and this.
Yeah, subjectively.
So, right? In my opinion, right? So when I see that, I'm like, but like the boomers make it out to seem like, oh, well, I retired from nursing and nursing was this and that. I'm like, yo, why you can't acknowledge that nursing is different? Like, that's frustrating.
But it's the same argument that people have when they compare, like, in sports. They compare somebody that played like 40 years ago. I'm like, yo, the ball has changed. The ball is lighter. Defenders are faster. Yeah, they're more physical back then, but that physical way of doing things might not work today. That person that you're like, oh, they were used to playing more rough and tough. Yeah, but they might not be used to the speed of the game now. They might not be able to know how to handle somebody who's not going to be as physical with them, because that might have been part of their game. So the same thing with nursing. You're like, oh, well, we had more. Yeah, but you didn't have as much level of scrutiny. So you have to see that there's a trade-off with certain things that have changed over time. And also, like, there's less loyalty. Like, like, I might be making more money than you did back in the 80s when you started, but your dollar was worth more than mine. So if you do the equivalent for inflation and you see what I can buy compared to you, it doesn't feel like it's worth the same thing to me. Don't wonder why after 2 years I'm like, you gonna leave that job too? Yo, I work at that place for 20 years.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they're not doing anything to try to keep me for 20 years.
That is definitely something that, like, for the next generation is to just be aware of, like, the options that you have. Be aware of your
people. Stop wondering why it's always the people. Maybe it's the institution. Like, is it all of that generation that's just a bunch of really weird, spoiled people? So I'm not talking about just boomers. Don't become that. Like, sometimes you gotta wonder, like, wait, why was it that I was able to work 15 years at somewhere and now they can't keep a nurse for more than 6 months?
Yeah.
Why is it? Or is that system has changed so much over time that it's unrecognizable and it's causing all of these people to have that reaction?
But not everybody has that self-awareness to think about, like, that was my time there, that was my experience, that was, you know, oh, when I was on that floor, that was that nurse manager. It's different. So, like, be aware of that when you are in nursing. You might be from that school, but like, by the time your kid is ready to go to that school, that school might not be that good at that anymore. So I hope you gained a lot from this, because I know I gained a lot from kind of venting about my past history with burnout, because Dan wasn't present for some of it. I definitely hope that this is something that can bring a discussion with you and your family members and your co-workers and all that stuff, because it's important that we do take the time to discuss this and express ourselves, because burnout can feel lonely, but it's not.
It shouldn't. Because it is happening everywhere and it's normal. And again, to reiterate the disclaimer that I said, anything that sounds familiar was altered and does not necessarily reflect on our current jobs, and also might just sound familiar to you because maybe similar scenarios has happened to you, but as well. I'm not gonna name, you know, like ABC hospital that I worked at in this year in that time frame, because that is unimportant. The moral behind the story is more important than the exact moment that it happened or the exact patient and all of that. So comment below if you've experienced burnout or if you're going through burnout and things that you kind of want to add to the discussion below. We are asking for more engagement in the comments about this, and I think, you know, like Dan is saying, that we are expecting this to kind of hit a nerve. It's going to hit a little different. And we'll continue this. We might want to revisit burnout again at another time. But we spoke about a bunch of other things, but burnout, I think, was the heaviest part of it all, because again, it's something that we're both experiencing or have experienced, and we continue to kind of work through it. So cheers to you and yours. And until the next time we're on our BS. Peace, love, and happiness, guys. Bye! You will always be my inspiration.